So we begin with the Mishnah in the third Perek. The Mishnah continues discussing the halachas on Yontif. Zogt heilige Mishnah. Ein tzodim dogim min abivarim b'yomtiv. You're not allowed to trap fish that are in a pool of water like this pond that's enclosed. So you're not allowed to trap from there on Yontif. So Rashi explains that even though we know all malachas of Eichel Nefesh are mutter on Yontif, we learned before in the Masechta, like shechting and the cooking, making a fire, but things that could be done from before Yontif are not mutter to be done on Yontif. As Rashi explains, when it comes to shechting, you want to have fresh meat, so you can't shecht it from before Yontif. But when it comes to trapping, so that's something that could have been done from yesterday, and therefore you're not allowed to do it on Yontif. There are actually some Rishonim that say that this is asam in Atayra, that the whole heter of Eichel Nefesh is only something that can't be done from before Yontif. But the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings the pshat that this is a gzeira midrabanan, that whatever could be done from before Yontif should not be done on Yontif itself.
So you have to trap the behemoth before Yontif too?
No, the behemoth, because it's for shchita, so that's something that is not going to be fresh if you're not going to trap, if you're not going to shecht it on Yontif itself.
Trapping.
Oh, the trapping. Oh, let's see in a second. Yeah, let's see over here in the continuation of the Mishnah. And you also are not allowed to feed the fish that you have in this bivar, in this pond of water. So Rashi says the reason you're not allowed to feed them is because, why should you feed them? They have what to eat on their own. So this is an extra tircha on Yontif that is not necessary what to do. Inside the water, they have what to eat. That's Rashi's pshat. Aval tzadin chaya v'oif min bivarim. You're allowed to trap a chaya or a oif from inside their enclosure that they're in. And Rashi says that right now, the way we understand this is, the reason is because since they're inside this gated area, they're already trapped. If it would be in the wild, and your mom is trapping it, then it's also to be done on Yontif, just like when you get to the tzeidah of fish. That could be done from before Yontif. But if it's in an enclosed area, it's already trapped. Unlike fish, when fish are inside this pond of water, the fish you have to still trap it. It's not really trapped. You have to go and trap it because it can swim away. Whereas the animals and the fish that are inside this enclosure, it's considered to be trapped already, and therefore you're allowed to take from there on Yontif. And also the Mishnah says, "V'noisnin lefneim mezainis." You could feed them. You could feed them on Yontif because these are the animals that they don't have what to eat on their own, and you have to feed them. Rashi says even if it's in the summer, they don't necessarily have food on their own, so therefore you have to go ahead and feed them. This is Rashi's pshat in the Mishnah. There's another pshat here that Tosfos says, b'negeh to feeding the fish or feeding the animals, and this is the pshat that Alter Rebbe brings in Shulchan Aruch, that the reason why you're not allowed to feed the fish is the gzeiras chazal that you shouldn't come to trap them. And the reason why you're allowed to feed the animals is because if they're already trapped, so there's no gzeira you're going to come to trap them, so you're allowed to feed them. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Loi kala bivarin shavin. You can't compare all the different enclosures where the animals are inside. The Tanakhama said, comes to animals inside an enclosure, you're allowed to trap. It's already trapped. Rab Shimon Gamliel says it depends. It's not all the same. Zeh klal, and the rule is as follows: Kol hamuchuset seida. If it's a kind of enclosure that it still lacks being trapped. In other words, it's big enough that it's going to run away from you. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what the shiur is. Then even by the animals, you're not allowed to trap it. It's not trapped yet. Like similar to the fish, that it swims away. But if it's not, it's adequately trapped already. It's not lacking being trapped, then mutter. Then you're allowed to trap it on Yontif because it's already trapped really. Okay, so the Gemara is going to focus on the halacha b'negeya to the animals that are inside this enclosure. And the Mishnah said that, in the Tanakhama, the Mishnah said that when it comes to chayas and oifis, so you're allowed to take it from inside these enclosures because it's trapped already. Vira mino, so a contradiction was asked from the following Beitza. It says, or it's actually a Mishnah, Masechta Shabbos. So it says there that bivarin shel chaya v'shel oifis, these enclosures where the animals are there and the birds are there, ain't sadim men b'yomtiv. You're not allowed to trap from them on Yontif. And you're not allowed to feed them. Kashya chaya chaya. So there's a contradiction there regarding an animal, if you're allowed to trap it on Yontif or not. And kashya oifis oifis. And there's also a contradiction regarding birds. Are you allowed to trap the birds or not? In other words, is it considered to be that it's already trapped or not? So the Gemara explains, Bishloi mechaya chaya loy kashya. The question we have regarding the animals, is it considered to be trapped already or not? That's not a contradiction, because I can tell you, ha Rab Yehuda and ha Rabbanon, that our Mishnah will go like the Rabbanon, as the Gemara will explain in a moment. And this Mishnah that we quoted from, or it's a Beitza, that we quoted from Masechta Shabbos, that is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara here brings the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon. The Tanan, because we learned the Mishnah Masechta Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda said. So the Mishnah over there is discussing the malacha of tzeidah. What's considered to be adequate trapping, that it's the malacha of tzeidah. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Hatzat sipur lemigdal. If you trapped a bird into a closet, utzvi lebayis, or a deer into a house, chayiv, you're chayiv for the malacha of trapping. So what do you see from Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? The Gemara now explains, lebayis hu de mechayiv. If you trap a deer into a house, only then you're chayiv. Aval lebivarin. If you trapped a deer into this enclosed area, like a courtyard, an enclosed area, you wouldn't be chayiv. So from the Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, you see, an animal that's in a bivod in this enclosed area is not trapped yet. So that's the opinion of the Beitza that we brought after the Mishnah, that on Yontif, you're not allowed to trap an animal that's inside this beaver. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's not called trapped yet. Now, the continuation in that Mishnah there is, Chachamim say, Tzipar lemigdal. Regarding the birds, he agrees to Rabbi Yehuda. It's only considered to be trapped if you trapped it into a closet. Tzvi, but when it comes to a deer or any other animal, so that he says, legina, lechotzer, ulebivarin, even if you trapped it into a garden, a courtyard, or to this enclosed area, it's already considered to be trapped. So our Mishnah was the Chachamim. Chachamim say, even in a bivad, even though it's outdoors, but it's an enclosed area, it's already considered to be trapped. So on Yontif, you can take from there. You're not trapping it, it's already trapped. So that's b'negei to chaya. Regarding a chaya, we have this machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, whether in an outdoor, enclosed area, is it already considered to be trapped or not?
Where does Rav Shimon ben Gamliel fit in all this?
The Gemara is going to bring soon, if he argues on this. The Gemara is going to explain. It's going to come. Elo oifis ha'oifis. But when it comes to birds, kashya, that's still a question. Because when it comes to birds, they both agree there that birds are not considered to be trapped until it's inside a closet. And in our Mishnah it said that even outdoors in a bivar, the birds is considered to be trapped already. And the Gemara explains the question. If you're going to want to make a distinction that there's different kinds of enclosures. Regarding birds, it's not a question either, because we could say there's different types of enclosures. If you have an enclosure that has a roof on it, that's considered to be trapped. The bird is not going to fly out. And then you have an enclosure that does not have a roof on it, and that's not considered to be trapped. Maybe that's the distinction between the Mishnah and the Beitza. But the Gemara says that's not an answer. But a house, the kebivim mekura dami, that's the same like an enclosure that has a roof on it. Ubein l'Rabbi Yehuda, ubein l'Rabbanon, and both according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanon, what did it say before? Tzipar lemigdal in. A bird, only if you trapped it into a closet, that's considered to be trapped. L'bayis loy. But if you trap it in a house, it's not considered to be trapped yet. So l'kula alma, even in an enclosed and with a roof in a beaver, it shouldn't be considered to be trapped yet. So how did it say in our Mishnah that you're allowed to take a bird from the beaver on Yontif if it's not trapped yet? So the Gemara gives a different answer. Amar Rabbi Baravuna, so Rabbi Baravuna explains. Hacha, over here, in what we quoted in the Gemara and the Beitza and the Gemara, where it said that only in a closet is a bird trapped, b'tzipur droir askinan. It's talking about this bird that's called a tzipur droir. What does this tzipur droir mean? The Gemara explains, she'ena mekabelas maras. It doesn't accept any authority. It flies away. It's hard to catch it. Rashi says the word droir. Okay, the Gemara here is going to bring. Let's see the lashon of the Gemara first. The Tana de Rabbi Shmuel. Lama nikra shema tzipur droir. Why is this bird called a tzipur droir? Shadara bebayis. It lives in the house kibesada. The same like it lives in outdoors in the field. Just like outdoors in the field, a bird flies from this corner to another corner. It flies away from you. So in the house, this bird also in the house, it's not trapped. You try to catch it, it's going to run away from you. Rashi says the word droir means dada. The way it lives comfortably in the house, just like it lives in the field, that it feels safe and free, that it could run away from you or could fly away from you. The same thing also in the house. So there's different types of birds basically. The Mishnah was speaking about a kind of bird that inside a bivar, it's already trapped, it's easy to catch. And the Beitza was speaking about this unique bird, this tzipor dryer that flies away. So the Gemara says, so now you made a distinction that there's two kinds of birds. So hashter, the asas lahachi, now that you're making this kind of distinction, chaya, achaya, nami lekashya. The contradiction we had regarding an animal in this beaver, you don't have to say that it's a machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. You could also make a similar kind of distinction that it depends what kind of a beaver this is. Beaver cotton. Over here in our Mishnah, it's talking about a smaller enclosure. So therefore you can take it in Yantiv. And beaver gadol. The Beitza was talking about a larger enclosure, and therefore it's not yet adequately trapped, so you can't take it on Yantiv. And here the Gemara explains what's the difference between the beaver cotton and the beaver gadol. Now this was really what Rab Shimon ben Gamliel was saying in the Mishnah, right? Rab Shimon ben Gamliel was the one that made this distinction between the beaver gadol and the beaver cotton. So Rashi here says that according to this answer of the Gemara, so it could be that Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is arguing with the Tanakama. The Tanakama was saying that by a beaver cotton you're allowed to come and by a beaver cotton you can come and trap it, by a beaver gadol you can't. Right? And Rab Shimon ben Gamliel was making a difference between mechuset seida and not mechuset seida. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel could have been saying, even regarding a beaver cotton, that the Tanakama said it's allowed, but nevertheless Rab Shimon ben Gamliel holds even this beaver cotton sometimes it's still not fully trapped. So could be Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is arguing. That's one pshat. Another pshat Rashi says, no, maybe Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is just coming to explain what the Tanakama said. Now that we're saying that even the Tanakama holds that you're only allowed to take the chaya when it's a beaver cotton, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is just explaining the Tanakama. Okay, we'll see soon in the Gemara, it's going to come back to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. But now the Gemara explains what is beaver gadol and what is beaver cotton. How do you measure this? Hey chidame beaver cotton, hey chidame beaver gadol. Omer Ravashi, so the Gemara gives a few shiurim. Ravashi says, Kol heiche derat basrei. Anytime if you can run after the animal, umatile bechat shachya, and you could reach it with like one jump or like with one try, you get it right away. So that's beaver cotton. That's a small beaver. It's already trapped. V'idach beaver gadol, and anything else, if you have to run after it and you have to run to it twice and you're not going to get it right away, that's a large enclosure that it's not trapped yet. Inami, another way to estimate this, kol heiche de'ike ukzi, if this is a beaver that has corners, so the animal could easily get out of you trapping it, could run into a corner, beaver gadol. That's called beaver gadol. In other words, it's not necessarily measured by size. It's measured by the shape. If it's a kind of a square that the animal could go into corners and run away from you, that's a beaver gadol. Ve'idach beaver cotton. If it does not have these corners, so then that's small, so it's already trapped. A third shiur, the Gemara says, inami, so it is by size. Kol heiche the nafli tuli the kostli adodi. If the walls of this enclosure are small enough that the shadow of one wall reaches the other wall. So then, mistam, it means the middle of the day, or what, I'm not sure, maybe it means what part of the day. I mean, in the middle of the day, you won't have any shadow of the walls, but the afternoon, when you have the shadow that comes down, so it doesn't reach the next wall, or it does reach the next wall. So if it reaches the other wall, beaver cotton. Ve'idach beaver gadol. If it does not reach the other wall, the shadow, so then it's considered to be a large beaver. Now the Gemara brings Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, and the Gemara says, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel loyme loy kale bivarin shavim v'chulu. So Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yudah, Amar Shmuel. The what?
It doesn't depend on the bird itself.
On the bird itself,
Yeah.
What kind of bird it is.
Yeah.
Before it said in the Gemara regarding the birds, it depends what kind of bird.
Can be a beaver.
And also it depends what kind of animal. Sometimes you have an animal that's quicker, sometimes it could be a deer, it could be a slow animal. So the Gemara is giving a shiur regarding the size or the shape or the kind of beaver, but it's not giving a shiur regarding the animals. Regarding the birds, the Gemara did make a chiluk. So you're asking a question. The Gemara could have made a similar distinction regarding the animals.
And catch it right away.
Okay, it's a good question.
But it could be a small room with a small beaver with tall walls. So that's also...
Yeah. So it's the different details there. The Gemara is not going through all those details. Anachanami. No, so the Gemara now says, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Halachic Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. We paskin like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel that said that there's a difference on how big this beaver is. Do you still have to trap it inside there? Do you not have to trap it inside there? So we'll paskin like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye now said to him, to Rav Yosef, Halacha. You're saying the halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Meklal, the pligi. So that sounds like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel came to argue on the Tanakama. But that is not necessarily true. I mentioned before, Rashi said, could be Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is just coming to explain the Tanakama. Amalei, so Rav Yosef said to Abaye, Omay nafkulach mina. What difference does it make if he's actually arguing, if he's not arguing? If he's not arguing, for sure the halacha is like him. So what difference does it make? Amalei, so Abaye says to Rav Yosef, Gemara, you learn Gemara and you say something, you say a statement in Gemara, Zmarta tehei, it should be like a song. You're saying the halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. So by saying that, you're giving a pshat on the Mishnah. You're saying the pshat on the Mishnah is that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is arguing. So yeah, I want to know what's the correct pshat on the Mishnah. It's not just a song. It has to be the correct pshat. So therefore, what you're saying is that he was arguing, and it's not necessarily true. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, so here it quotes the actual lashon of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The Gemara is going to give now a different shiur regarding this. Zeh klal kol hamochus tzeidah. That if it's inside this beaver, but it still needs to be trapped, so then you can't take it on Yontif. Hey, chidami mechuset seide. What does this mean, mechuset seide? That it still has to be trapped. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Kol she'oime hava mitzuda v'nitzudenu. So this is a shiur that includes everything. If it's a situation that it's inside this beaver, but you're still going to say, bring me a trap to trap this animal. So then you see that it's not trapped yet. You have to still trap it. Rashi says that this shiur that he's saying here is really similar to the shiurim that it said before, but he's just using a different way of saying it. But it's really the same point. As long as you have to find a way to still trap it, so that means it's still trapped. It's not trapped yet. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye asks on this shiur. But we know that the halacha is v'ha avozin v'tarnegolim. It comes to geese or chickens. She'oimrim hava mitzuda v'nitzudenu. That you have them in your area, and if you want to take one, so you're going to have a trap to trap it. V'tanya, but in a Beitza we learned tatzot avozim v'tarnegolim. If someone traps geese or chickens or v'yayni hardisois, or these doves that are called hardisois, they come from a certain place. Rashi says it's domesticated doves that live by a person. Potter, he's potter for trapping them on Yontif. It's considered to be that they live by you and they're already trapped. Even though it's a case that when you want to actually take them, you do have to bring a trap to trap them. So what's the difference? Amar Rabba bar Avona Amar Shmuel, there's a difference. Why? Halalu, these that you just mentioned here, the geese, the chickens, and the doves, ban lekluvan le'erev. In the evening, they come back into their coop. They have this basket or this coop that they live in, and they come back. So at evening, it's very easy to catch them. So therefore, they're considered to be trapped already. V'halalu ein ban lekluvan le'erev. The ones that Rav Yosef spoke about, and he said that if you have to bring a trap to trap them, so it's not trapped yet. He's talking about other things that they don't come back to their coop in the evening, so therefore it's not trapped yet. Frek the Gemara. Now the Gemara asks on this klal that it depends. What did the Gemara just say? That it depends if it comes back in the evening to its coop or not. But v'harei yoini shoivech v'yoini aliyah, the doves that live in a dovecote or they live in the attic, the bon lekluvan le'erev, they also come at night back to their little dovecote, whatever it is. And what's the halacha? V'tanya, we learned in the Beitza, hatzad yoini shoivech v'yoini aliyah. On Yontif, if you trap these doves, v'tziparim, or other kinds of birds, shekinenu betfichim bebirois, that are nesting in these jars that they placed on top of these houses. So these kinds of birds, if you trap them, chayiv, you are chayiv. And the question is, even though these birds do come back in the evening to their nest, so still you chayiv when you trap them. Ela Amar Rabba bar Avona, so Rabba bar Avona, Amar Shmuel, he adds another detail there. So halalu, the geese and the chickens that we spoke about before, bon lekluvan le'erev, they come back to their coop in the evening. And not only that, umizoynasan alecha, they also, you're the one that feeds them. So therefore, it's mamish considered to be like in your possession already, like it's fully trapped. But va'alalu, the doves, bon lekluvan le'erev, they do come back to the dovecote in the evening. But you don't feed them. They eat in the wild. So therefore, even though they come back in the evening, it's not considered to be trapped yet. Gemara says another distinction. Rav Mari said, Hani avidi liribuye. These doves, they escape, they run away from you. And vahani lo avidi liribuye. The geese and the chickens, you come to catch them, they don't run away from you. So the Gemara asks him, is this true? Kulanami avidi liribuye. All of them, they all run away from you. You try to catch a chicken, it runs away from you. So the Gemara says, no, it depends. Lekluvan kamrinan. Once they come back into their coop, a chicken, if you try to catch a chicken that's in the street or that's out in the wild, it's going to run away from you. But the chicken, when it comes back into its chicken coop, over there, you can just grab it. It's not going to run away from you. So over here, but when it comes to these doves, lekluvan kamrinan da avida lirabuye. A dove, these birds, even after they come into their attic, into their nest, and you try to catch it in the nest, it flies away from the nest. And therefore, if you catch it, if you trap it on Yontif, you did a malacha of tzeidah on Yontif. Zog the Heilige Mishnah, the Mishnah here continues discussing this subject. But over here, it discusses a situation. Till here we were discussing the malacha of tzeidah on Yontif, that Chachamim aser to do the malacha of tzeidah on Yontif. So we're discussing different scenarios. Is it already trapped? Is it not already trapped? Now, this Mishnah is going to discuss B'negea to the issue of muktzeh. You have to have these animals or these fish or whatever it is designated from before Yontif, even if you're not doing any malach of tzeidah. But there's an issue of taking anything from the wild on Yontif because it's muktzeh. You have to have it designated from before. So Zakta Mishnah, Mitzudis, Chaye, V'oi, V'dogim. So if you have these traps that were put out from before already, traps for animals, for birds, for fish, Sha'asan Merev Yontif. You put them out from before Yontif. So you cannot take any of the fish or the animals or the birds that you find in it on Yontif that were trapped there, unless you know for sure that it was trapped from before Yontif. In other words, if it's a suffix, it's basically a suffix muktzeh. If it's a suffix muktzeh, you're not allowed to use it on Yontif. What it says there in the Mishnah is a very big chiddush, because the whole issur of muktzeh is the issur d'Rabbanan. And usually when it comes to issur d'Rabbanan, what's the klal? Sveika d'Rabbanan l'kula. So why should it be also if it's a suffix? So the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings the hezber, because the Gemara says it before in Masechta Beya, that a davar sheyesh lo matirin, chachamim will mo machmer. Since muktzeh is something that if you wait until after Yontif, it's going to become mutter. By a davar sheyesh lo matirin, you machmer misafik, even for something which is also only midrabbanan. That's the din of this Mishnah. Then the Mishnah brings a story. The what? No. Muktzeh is always a davar sheyesh lo matirin. And therefore, safik muktzeh, even though it's only midrabbanan, is going to be aser. That's what the Mishnah is saying here. There was an incident with a guy. Shehevi dogim l'Rabbi Gamliel. He brought fish to Rabbi Gamliel, and va'amar mutarane. Rabbi Gamliel said that it's mutter. I'm not interested in accepting this gift from this guy because he did, like Rashi says, Shani Sinai. He didn't get along with this guy. He didn't want to accept the gift from this guy. So the Gemara asks right away in the Mishnah, Maise listai? Is it ordinary for the Mishnah, normal for the Mishnah, to bring a story that has a contradiction to the halacha that I just said? This guy is bringing this food to Rabbi Gamliel. You don't know if it was trapped on Yontiv or before Yontiv. It could be muktzeh. So why did he say that it's mutter? So the Gemara explains, you're right, it's takamachloikis, chasuri machsere, there's something missing here in the Mishnah. And vahachi ketani, this is how you have to learn the Mishnah. Safik muchan, if it's a safik, if it was already designated, aser. The Tanakama says it's aser because he holds that safik muktzeh is aser. Rabbi Gamliel matter. Rabbi Gamliel holds that safik muktzeh is allowed. And on that, the Gemara brings a Maisanami b'nochri echad shehevi dagam that Rabbi Gamliel v'ama mitaranela shani ein ritzaini lekabel menu. So the story is coming to support the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel, what he did according to his opinion. Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel ein halacha Rabbi Gamliel. We don't paskin like Rabbi Gamliel. We paskin like the Tanakama that safik muchan or safik muktzeh is aser. Others learned what Rav Yudah Mashmuel said. Ahad Tanya on the following brayse. Safik muchan, if it's a safik, if it was prepared before Yom Tov, Rabbi Gamliel mater, Rabbi Gamliel says it's allowed, but Rabbi Yeshua oiser, Rabbi Yeshua says it's aser. And on that, Rabbi Yudah Mashmuel, halacha Rabbi Yeshua, we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. V'kedamasnila aha. And others learned this statement that we paskin like we don't paskin like Rabbi Gamliel on the following brayse. Tanya, we learned in the brayse, it says as follows. Sheichten min hanigarin b'yomtiv. You're allowed to shecht animals that are inside nigarin. Nigarin is also a kind of enclosure, similar to what we learned before, as Rashi says, a beaver. It's called nigarin because they had these enclosures that had water flowing in it. They had like these little pools for the animals to drink from it. So this is considered to be an enclosure that's already fully trapped from before Yom Tov. So it's not muktzah, it's trapped already. Avoloi min hareshsos umin hamachmeiris. But if you have a trap or some kind of a net that you put out from before Yom Tov, and there's an animal that you find there on Yom Tov, you can't eat from it on Yom Tov because you don't know when it was trapped. It could be it was trapped from before Yom Tov. So this is the Safek Muktzah. Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, Ba umatzan mikul kolin. If you find your trap that was moved out of its position. Rashi explains, they used to spread out these very long traps that it could even be, Rashi says, even like a mile long, a mil or chatzi mil, like a very long trap. And the animal would run into the trap in one area, and when the animal ran into the trap, so it shook the whole trap. It was trying to make its way out. And even if you're far away, and you'll see that it moved out of its position, so you know, an animal was already trapped somewhere, and you have to go find where the animal was trapped in the trap. So therefore, Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, if you see already from before Yom Tov, mikul kolin, that it was moved out of its position, b'yedua sheme'erev Yom Tov nitzudo. That's a sign that you can rely on that you know that the animal that you'll find later was probably trapped already from before Yom Tov. Umutarin, so you're allowed to use it. Ba matzan mikul kolin be Yom Tov. What's if you come on Yom Tov itself, and only on Yom Tov you see that the trap moved out of its position? So then you know that the animal was only trapped on Yom Tov itself. So Rab Shimon ben Elazar is saying you have to see. You have to see when the animal was trapped. Was it trapped before Yom Tov or after Yom Tov? If it was before Yom Tov or on Yom Tov?
It was never a suffix.
If vasuran, then it would be asa. So the Gemara is going to ask the exact question that you're pointing out now. Frek the Gemara ha gufa kashe, in the opinion of Rab Shimon ben Elazar regarding the case of a suffix, he seems to be contradicting himself. Why? Because Amrit, first you're saying bo matzah mikol kolam out of Yom Tov, that if you found it already moved out of its position from before Yom Tov, then biyudua, then you know shemerev Yom Tov nitzaydu, that it was trapped from before Yom Tov. So what is it mashma from this? The only reason it's allowed is the ba or matzah mikul kolin, because he saw it. He saw it already moved out of its position before Yom Tov. Has feike asurin. So from this is mashma that if it would be a situation of a suffix, you didn't notice, you don't know, then it would be asa. That's what you see from the first part of what Rab Shimon ben Elazar was saying. But Amos Seif, what did he say right afterwards? Bo matzah mikul kolin be Yom Tov. If you see that the trap moved out of its position on Yom Tov, biyudua should be Yom Tov nitzudu. Then you know that it was trapped on Yom Tov. So from this it's mashma, the only reason it's allowed is because the ba matzah mikul kolin, because you only found it moved out of its position on Yom Tov. Has feike. But if it would be a suffix me'erev Yom Tov nitzaydu, that maybe it was trapped from before Yom Tov, umutarin, and it would be allowed. So there's a contradiction there in Rab Shimon ben Elazar's opinion. In a case of a suffix, is it allowed or not? So the Gemara explains what Rab Shimon ben Elazar was saying. Hachi ka'amar. This is what Rab Shimon ben Elazar was saying. Ba'u matzah mikul kolam erev Yom Tov. If the trap was moved out of its position from before Yom Tov, so then biyudua, you know shemerev Yom Tov nitzaydu, that it was trapped from before Yom Tov umutarin, and then it's allowed. And has feike. But if it's a case that you don't know, so then the way you read what Rab Shimon ben Elazar is saying is nasa kimi shenitzaydu b'Yom Tov asurin. Even if it's just a suffix, we treat it the same as if you know that it was trapped on Yom Tov and it's going to be yasser. So the sefer was really talking about a suffix. And in a case of a suffix, it's as if you know it was trapped on Yom Tov and it's going to be yasser. So regarding this, we paskin like Rab Shimon ben Elazar that in a case of a suffix, it's going to be yasser. That we paskin like Rab Shimon ben Elazar. And this is the halacha that's brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe brings this in Shulchan Aruch, that a suffix muktzeh is asr on Yom Tov, and I mentioned before, the reason is because it's a davish yesh lematirin.
Sorry, so we said yesh lematirin is mutar.
Now, davish yesh lematirin is mochamer, because it's yesh lematirin, so therefore it's asr. Okay, what did it say in the Mishnah? The next thing. So Rabbi Gamliel said that it's mutter, but he just didn't want to take it from the guy. So the Gemara explains when it said in the Mishnah mutter. Rabbi Gamliel held it is mutter. Mutarin lamai. For what did Rabbi Gamliel hold it's mutter? Rav said even Rabbi Gamliel in a case of a suffix muktzeh didn't hold that it's completely mutter. It's mutarin lekabel. You could accept it from the guy, but you're still not allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to use it. V'Levi Amar, Levi says, mutaren ba'achila. No, Rabbi Gamliel held, Safik Muktzeh is completely mutter. You're even allowed to go ahead and eat it. Amar Rav, so Rav says, L'oilam al yilna adam atzmai mi beis hamedrash. A person should never be absent from the shiur in the shul, in the beis hamedrash, afilo shah achas, even if it's just one moment. Why? Because Danav Levi havinan kamei de Rebbe, myself and Levi, we were learning by Rebbe, this halacha here. Ki amra laha shmaita be'urte, and when Rebbe taught this halacha in the evening, Amar mutarim ba'achila, he taught the pshat and Rabbi Gamliel that it's totally mutter, even to eat. Then Betzafra, it came in the morning, Omar, the Rebbe changed his mind, and he said, Mutar and lekabel, that it's only allowed to receive it from the guy, but you're not allowed to eat it. So Rav says, I was in the shul the next morning by the shiur, so hadribi, I retracted my opinion, I heard what the Rebbe said. Levi, but Levi was not in the shul the next morning, so he didn't retract his opinion, he kept what he said, that it's completely mutter even to eat. Now the Gemara asks on Levi's opinion. Meisvei, the Gemara asks a shaila, it says in the Beitza, Nochri shehevi doiron li Yisrael. A guy brings a gift for a yid on Yontif. Afile dogem mufulamin. Even if these are fish, Rashi says mufulamin means they're still moist. It's like mamish, you see fresh fish that it seems like it was just caught now. Upeiris b'nei yaiman. Or you see that it's fresh fruits that were just picked today. Mutaren. You're allowed to take it from the guy. So what does this mean? If it was mamish just picked today, l'chayre this is absolutely muktzah. So what does it mean? You're allowed to take it from the guy. According to Levi, that interprets the word mutaren in such a context. What does Levi say? Mutaren means you're allowed to accept it, but not that you're allowed to eat it. Rav says that's mutaren lekabel shapir. So over here, regarding this case of the fresh fish, freshly caught fish, and freshly picked fruits. So according to Rav, we could say that really it's muktzah, you're not allowed to eat it, but lekabel, you're allowed to accept it, you're allowed to take it from the guy. But Levi that says that the word mutaran in this context means that you're allowed to eat it, peiris b'nei yaiman. If you have fruits that were freshly picked today, mishara ba'achila, are you allowed to eat it? It's mamish muktzah. On Yontif, if it was on the tree, it came off the tree on Yontif, it's mamish muktzah. So from here you see that the word mutarin cannot mean that you are allowed to eat it. But the Gemara asks on this, according to your reasoning, peiris b'nei yaiman, peiris that were mamish picked today, misharu betiltul, it's not only not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to even move it, it's totally muktzah. So even according to Rav, what's the pshat in this Beitza that you're allowed to take it from the guy? So the Gemara says it must be a different pshat there. Ela bekavri da adimi. We're talking about fish that still have this redness in its cheeks, and therefore it looks like it was caught today. It wasn't, but it looks like it was caught today. Upeiri the kvishi biyarke, and we're talking about fruits that are still wrapped with green leaves on it, and it looks like it was just picked today. Askina, that's what we're talking about. V'amai karalu b'nei yaiman. When the Beitza says that it's from today, why is he saying it's from today? Really, it's not from today. Shehein ke'en b'nei yaiman. It's just that they look like that they were picked today, but really they weren't. And therefore the chiddush of the Beitza is, you may have thought that because it looks like it was picked today, you shouldn't take it. And nevertheless, it says that you are allowed. Rav Papa, regarding this halacha of accepting a gift from a guy, so Rav Papa says, Hilchese, the halacha is, Nachri shehevi doirain li Yisrael b'yamtiv. If a guy brings you a gift on Yamtiv, so then are you allowed to accept it from him or not? So now the halacha is like this: Im yesh ma'isiyamim b'mechubar. If from this type that he's bringing you, you see that they're still connected to the tree and growing on a tree, also you're not allowed to accept it from him because it's very likely that he pulled it off a tree. Ule'erev nami yasurin. And not only that, even at night after Yontif, it's also going to be yasur b'chdei sheyasu. You have to wait for how long it would take to pick it and deliver it to you. V'im ein ma'osi min b'mechuber. If you don't have from this min in that area that's connected to a tree, so then toichat tchum. If he brought it from inside the tchum, mutter. Chutz l'tchum. If he brought it from outside the tchum, aser. Then it's not going to be allowed. V'hava b'shvul Yisrael zeh. If it was brought for one yid, mutter li Yisrael acher. You're allowed to use it for another yid. So Rashi here explains, because the Isser of Tchum is only Midrabanan, so therefore, Chachamim were makel and said that if the guy did only a malacha isser midrabanan to bring it to you, so therefore if it's for another year, it is allowed to be used on Yom Tov. So here there's an interesting Rashi. You don't have usually the last Rashi on the Chavdalar Amud Beis. It's not so usual to have such a kind of a Rashi. So Rashi discusses when it says over here that if it was brought from a type that's still connected to the tree, and therefore it's going to be aser, till when is it aser? We have 2 days Yom Tov. If the guy brought it to you on the first day of Yom Tov, is it going to be aser until the night? In other words, till the second day Yom Tov? And the second day Yom Tov it's allowed? Or is it going to be aser until matzah the second day of Yom Tov? So Rashi says it's only aser the first day of Yom Tov. The second day of Yom Tov it's allowed. And the reason is, according to Rashi's Shittah, the reason for the Isser is you're not allowed to have anah from something that the malacha was done with it on Yom Tov. So on the second day of Yom Tov, it's going to be allowed, because when it comes to the 2 days of Yom Tov, we always say that if the first day is Yom Tov, the second day is Chayil. If the second day is Yom Tov, the first day is Chayil. So it's not a problem. Taisvis and Rashi, he brings that he wasn't zeichet to ask the question to his Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov, but then he spoke to other contemporaries in Rashi's time. Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi, Rashi brings a whole list of people that he discussed this with. And the Baal Halacha's Gedolos, they disagreed with him. They held that no, it's going to be Aser until after the second day of Yom Tov. But Rashi brings that Rabbeinu Gershom agreed to him, Rab Kleinimus, he's Baki B'chol HaShas, and he agreed to him also. But Taisvis here disagrees. Taisvis says the reason why you're not allowed to have anah from what a guy brings to you on Yom Tov is not because you're having anah from the malacha of Yom Tov. It's a gzeira. They didn't want you to tell a guy to do malacha for you on Yom Tov. So therefore, until the second day Yom Tov, after completely Yom Tov is over, only then they were matir. Because otherwise you're going to come to tell a guy to do the malacha for you for the first day, for the second day. So Taisus holds that it's asr until completely the end of Yom Tov. There's another detail Taisus brings up. When you get a case where there's a suffix, if it's brought out of the tchum, you don't know if it was brought from out of the tchum or not. This whole thing is negaya today when you get a delivery from a package on Yom Tov. I had a few years ago, I was ordering chairs for the sukkah on Yom Tov, and the chairs only arrived on the first day of Sukkot. So am I allowed to use it or not? So I was mevada before Yom Tov that the chairs were already in Brooklyn in a storage house in Brooklyn, and they just had to bring it from the storage house from Brooklyn to my house. So it came from Teichat Tchum. But if it's coming from outside the Tchum, or Taisa says, if it's a suffix, you don't know if it came from inside the tchum or not, it's mutter. Only if you know for sure that it's delivered from outside the tchum, then it's going to be hasar.